See the sticker? Love that Skinner quote. Alright, so on today's episode, talk about just working way too much and way too hard. This concept of self-care and really balancing what it is that you love to do with the things that help you make sure that you're really in your maximum capacity when you do those sort of things, whether that's working with clients, building out systems, whatever it is that is kind of in line with saving the world. That's what today's topic is about. Now, I'm specifically known for just going as hard as I possibly can all of the time. I've been, I think, home in Reno 5 days or 6 days out of the last month and a half or so. It's just go, 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 go. And I love it, don't get me wrong. But I also struggle sometimes, like you'll see with Shane and I talking here about this idea of self-care and taking care of yourself first and foremost. So this content was captured at the Association of Behavior Analysis International's annual conference in San Diego, where Shane and some others were actually speaking on a panel specifically about this topic. So I've sprinkled some of that in with our interview. It was a jam-packed house. Everyone who attended, it looks like it was just very well received. Let me know what you think down below if you were there. So let's jump into that. All right, and I can only talk to this one. All right, so today we have Shane Spiker, and I wanted to bring you on to talk about self-care. We actually just heard this around the corner, prepping for this episode, to talk about self-care, and someone else was mentioning it. We probably need to go follow up on that afterwards. Yeah. But let's start with who are you? What do you do?
I'm Shane Spiker, BCBA. I've been working in the field for about 10 years, and I'm a PhD student studying self-care for my dissertation right now.
Yeah. And we ran into each other on the internet somehow. I don't remember.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, and then you kicked me out of the group. You didn't kick me out of the group. It's fine. And then I rejoined the group and started working with you guys on some stuff. Yeah.
You were like working on self-care stuff, probably.
I actually drew the line. I was like, nah, I can't do this. I don't have time.
Yeah. So let's start with what is self-care?
So self-care is a set of repertoires, behavioral repertoires that practitioners or medical professionals might engage in that are designed to help reduce the amount of stress at the workplace. It might be something along the lines of just going to grab a drink, decompressing after work. It might be taking the time to read a book. It might be drawing some hard lines for work standards, and being able to say, at the end of the day, I can only work 8 hours a day, and that's my hard line. So a lot of it's just it's a pretty complex set of repertoires that you look at that really at the end of the day kind of enhance our practice when we engage in good self-care.
And my understanding is we're not exactly sure what those repertoires are all the time. Like, we're just starting to understand some of the conceptual parts of this, and there's not much research out there, right?
There's not much research in our field, no.
Okay.
And I think that goes back to we just don't do a good job of being introspective on our own. We don't research our own very well. But there's a ton of research in the psychology and medical journals. So it's actually, the theory of self-care comes from a nursing model. And was published in 1958. So Dorothy Oram does a really good job of spelling out what self-care is, what self-care deficits look like, and what it looks like in an organization. So it's an old model. We just don't use it.
Okay. Is it an effective model?
Yeah, it can be. It can be. And you see that a little bit when practitioners in different fields actually draw the lines they need to. So you have a psychologist that's engaging in some counseling sessions, that's going through some vicarious traumatization. They start engaging in some self-care repertoires, and they're able to draw a line and prevent that burnout later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any stats on burnout rates, cost? Is there anything that you kind of look at there?
There's something out there, but there's so much data, it's hard to pull one or another. But there is a pretty high burnout in the nursing field in particular. First responders and counselors that work in trauma. There tends to be quite a bit of burnout there.
I'll find some of those stats and link them below just to commit to getting some of that data out there. Why does this stuff matter at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, for me, it just looks like this idea that if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anybody else. As a behavior analytic practitioner, we have the care of our clients, that are in our charge. We've got supervisees that are relying on us. We've got organizations that are relying on us to be able to implement different services in the field. And at the end of the day, if we can't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to take care of anybody else. So we've got to be able to look at that.
Makes sense. So how do you do this yourself in a day-to-day?
So I struggle.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah, I think so. I really try to draw some hard lines. One thing, I try not to answer my phone after a certain time at night, unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
I try to read books that aren't inherently behavior analytic. That's been a really great way for me to engage in some self-care. I don't work on the weekends. I actively try not to work on the weekends. And I engage in some passion projects. A lot of my passion projects are behavior analytic in nature, so I might be teaching somewhere or might be developing a training, but that's something I like to do. So that's caring for me, because it's something that's not in my day-to-day job.
Yeah. So what's your day-to-day role? It's pretty encompassing.
Yeah. So my day-to-day role, I'm an administrator, technically a regional coordinator. I work for a large organization, and I coordinate services. I hire people, I train people, I supervise people, I engage. I actually provide direct therapy for individuals. So I kind of cover quite a bit of ground, and my specialty is in crisis. So working in a scene where you're watching people get beat up, and it can be pretty traumatizing. For sure. So that idea that we're not taking care of ourselves in that regard, I think that's kind of where it stems from. And so my day to day is pretty. That's just that's my one job. Yeah. So that doesn't count for teaching or anything.
So one thing that I like about you is you talk about this sort of stuff, but you're actually chasing this down as your dissertation topic, right?
Yeah.
So that's happening. If people want to learn more, what are some resources we can link them to?
So I think the best place to start is some of the psychology literature, looking at literature regarding direct care staff, regarding counselors, therapists that are doing psychotherapy, which I know, but at the end of the day, there is some good literature on what those effects are. Caregiver burnout, compassion fatigue, things like that. And
I've actually done a video on this, talking about. Steve Hayes taught me the importance of those areas of journals that are outside of our field that we may not consume a ton of, and maybe different from our conceptual systems and whatnot, still ask extremely good questions and the things that we need to be paying attention to.
And this one in particular is one that there's a lot of literature out there, and the closest I could find in our field was an article by Vollmer that talks about, it was actually the self-care repertoires were all ADLs, activities of daily living, and then same thing with the Trahan article from 2016, where they were working with dementia patients doing activities of daily living and not practitioner repertoires. So
cool. So we're gonna link those down below. Check them out. Thanks for jumping on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for a good
Thank you for having me.
handshake. All right. Shane's awesome. Great friend and colleague. Thank you so much, man, for jumping on, and specifically for trying to push this topic in your own personal and professional life. Now, as for me, my sort of strategies is I'm always trying to measure and conceptually understand what it is that's going on in my life. So I kind of have this rule of if anything seems to be off, I immediately stop and analyze the situation. And it could be something that's totally outside of a different realm of my life that's impacting the work that I'm doing, which is kind of this whole topic of self-care. How does it impact your work life? And the clients that we're serving, the systems we're responsible for, etc. This is typically a three-pronged approach. The first is a daily reflections. It's typically in the morning after the gym, where I just kind of go through and think about for 5 or 10 minutes, what are the things that I value, enjoy, and how have I gone about the day before really pursuing those sort of things. So I can make any immediate changes that I want to make that day specifically in relation to my tasks that I need to do for that day. The second is looking at these things on a weekly basis in a little bit more depth. So I spend about an hour to 2 hours to get all my to-do lists, my goals, the time that I have, my schedule coming up, and exactly what it is that I can achieve that week in relation to all of those. So that's not just going to be the tasks I need to achieve for the business per se or this channel. It's also include things like downtime or enjoying the outdoors, seeing family, etc. I'm always making sure I'm looking at those as well. And the last one is a support network that can keep you in check and help you give that feedback and constant kind of correction as to how you're doing. So I rely on my family to help me with those and my close colleagues and friends, depending on the domain of my life. So I'm really interested what it is that you do for self-care, how you go about it, how you measure it, anything that you maybe run into, any resources that you found valuable. And so if you can link those down below, I'm leaving this up to you now. And with that said, thank you. And that's your Daily BA. Wait, don't click out yet. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe. It makes a huge difference. Let's tell the world what it is that we know or what we need to find out when it comes to self-care. Share this around, tag a friend. It makes such a difference on this content getting outside of our typical walls. So yeah, that's your job now. I'll see you tomorrow. You know, if you told me a year ago, I've been hanging out with y'all, especially Matt Sikori of the Behavioral Observations podcast, I'd say you're crazy. And today, on the Daily BA, I wanted to talk about the reasons I may or may not wear a hat from a behavioral perspective.